Hello and welcome to the Bigger, Braver Life Show. I'm your host, Angela Marie Williams. As an entrepreneur and success coach, my mission is to empower you to realize your dreams and potential through transformational experiences. The purpose of this show is to inspire your positive change by learning from a community of those paving the way to a bigger, braver life. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bigger, Braver Life Show. I'm Angela Williams, your Bigger, Braver Life and Success Coach. I am so happy to be joined by a fellow colleague, and I'm super excited for her to share her work in the world and her story with us. Magdala Adeleke is with us today. So happy to have her. And Magdala, why don't you start by introducing yourself and sharing the work that you do in this world?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm really happy to be here to join Angela on this amazing show. So about me, I'm Magdala Adeleke. I'm a financial therapist, and you probably haven't heard of that before, right? It's like, what is that? So a financial therapist is someone who looks at money from a psychological and emotional perspective. Our work aims to uncover the reasons behind money behaviors to help you process them, deal with those complex emotions, and change your behaviors around money, the decisions that you make, and help you have a healthier and more positive relationship with money. Right. So I'm the founder of Financial Therapies, LLC, which is a holistic financial coaching company. And my focus is mainly on women and couples. I want them to improve their relationship with themselves, with their money, and with each other, right? If it's a couple. And because I think financial empowerment is so important, especially for us women. And I just want to make sure that I'm supporting women no matter what stage they're in their lives, right? Whether they're single, married, about to get married, getting a divorce, or getting an inheritance, or dealing with any type of life transitions. And that is the passion of mine.
I love this. So how did you stumble upon this work? You don't really hear it that much, but yet it's so needed. So tell us more about how your journey led you to this work.
Yeah, well, ironically, I'm one of those few people that actually studied both finance and psychology, although I had no idea that eventually I would combine them to do what I do now. There were just two things that I was just interested in, right? But my work experience is mainly in finance. I worked in banking, financial management, and the nonprofit sector. And money came natural to me, right? It's just one of the innate talents. Since I was young, I decided I'm going to, like do something different than I saw around me when it came to money management.
Yeah.
I decided, okay, I don't want this life, so I'm going to do something different. So I've just been managing my money that way and, got into banking. But it wasn't until recently, 2 years ago, that I realized that I could combine the two because money is more psychological than it is, financial or numbers driven, right? Because I started realizing that people don't do the things that we say we're going to do, we should do. We have the willpower, we have the intellect, we have the discipline, but there's something else going on here, right? What is that? So after doing my own personal work around just general trauma, I realized we have a lot of financial trauma and we're not talking about that and we're not dealing about it. So if we can address that, then perhaps we could start changing our behaviors when it comes to money. And that's how I stumbled upon financial therapy.
Yes. And, you mentioned it being something we don't talk about, but is so needed. And, a lot of the work that I've done with my therapy clients, with my coaching clients, especially with women business owners, it's just so interesting to see the different levels of money trauma or money stories that come up and how that really does impact somebody's success in their life and their business and all of these things. Or even some people will make a lot of money and then lose it, or right. Like there's so many different things that happen with money. And sometimes people just really feel like they have to work so hard and that's what they have to do to get money, but they never kind of break that cycle. Do you mind sharing with us the common statements or beliefs or stories that impact us in an unhelpful way surrounding money?
Yeah, I think the key thing to remember is that we go back to what's familiar to us, right, to our comfort zone, even if it's painful, right?
Right.
Let's say in the case of someone who worked really hard, they made a lot of money, but somehow they can't keep it, right? It's almost like poverty is their comfort zone. This is
Right.
where they're comfortable. They're like, people around me are like that. This is what I'm used to. And they haven't upgraded their mindset to handle money. So no matter how much money they make, they'll spend it. And then they'll end up exactly at their equilibrium. And that's what's happening here. Until you realize what's happening and you could work on reprogramming yourself, then that's going to happen. And you don't even know why, because you're like, that was such a stupid thing that I did. Like, why did I do that? It makes no sense to you. And you know you could do better, but you just have no idea why. Like, it's like we have a script. That's what we call it, right? You have a money script that's just operating. You're not even thinking. It's on autopilot, happening all subconsciously. And it's driving your behaviors. And if you're not aware of it and are mindful of it and are intentional about doing things differently, then it's going to continue to happen. Right. Another common money script that people have is like you said, you think you have to work really hard for money because your mother or your father had 3 jobs, but they worked hard for money because that was their situation, right? Like they had to because they were making minimum wage. Now that you're making 6 figures, you don't necessarily need to work as hard, but because that's what you saw growing up, you're thinking, okay, working hard is how you make money. That's what success is. And this is what you need to do to take care of your family. Where it's like, no, they were working hard because they weren't making enough money and they needed multiple jobs to make enough to cover your expenses. So that's not the case for you. So we often don't upgrade the context, right? That context no longer apply to you today. So now you need to change things around.
Right. A couple of things you said I wanted to touch on. So, like you said, we have these stories and these patterns and these schemas, the way that we're looking at life. And that's what we know. That's what we've grown up with. And that's why you see, taking it out of the money context for a second, that's why you see people repeating the same relationship styles that they've learned growing up. If I had $1 for every time I hear, I'm in this relationship and it reminds me a lot of my mom or reminds me a lot of my dad, right? And in a way that we are just repeating what is familiar, even if it's not good for us, that is what we do because our brains are so wired for that familiarity piece. So and take that to the relationship context, we take that to even ourselves. So if we grew up and we were really programmed to be scared or be fearful. And that's a lot of the folks that I'm working with. That's something that I had to overcome too, is some of that generational fear programming. It's that, we have to work really intently to understand the story, understand what's going on there and say, okay, I'm going to not repeat this. And here's what I'm going to do differently. So for those stories that you shared, how do you help someone upgrade? What's your process? How do you help someone understand and then upgrade that money mindset to match what's actually going on or what they want it to be?
Yeah, the first step is to understand where it comes from. Right. So we have to dig deeper because, okay, we may start talking and I understand what your current situation is, right? I'm like, okay, great. But how did you even get here? What happened to make you create this narrative? So we dig back and we start, asking questions and, finding examples of, like the money stories, the messaging that they got in their community, their household, whatever influenced them. And so we start digging and eventually we get to the root. And that's the work that needs to be done. And it's often painful, right? Because you're remembering stories and events from your life that weren't that great. So once you understand that, then it's like, oh my goodness, I get it. This is why. I'm pretty sure it's similar in your work, right? It's like, oh, this is why I'm like this. Well, my mama did it this way. My dad, oh, this is how my family is. And that script has been passed on from generations. So it's not just from your parents, it's from your grandparents, great-grandparents, it's your community, your gender, your race, like so much is influencing that. So just getting to the bottom of it helps you to understand why you're this way. Then it's like, all right, this is not serving you. How do you want to view money? What relationship do you want to have? So once we're clear on that, because it's going to be a little bit different from everyone, a healthy relationship with money will depend on the individual, but generally you want to be in control and you want to have a constructive relationship with money. So once we figure out exactly what your goals are, then we could start, like basically you kind of like have to have a new money mantra. This is, like, okay, money is good. If your script was like, oh, you think money is bad, is for the greedy, I'm not those type of people that should have money, like I'm not worthy. And to start, what is your new truth? Because you can create your new reality. So we start, figuring out what that is, and we repeat it until you believe it. Because at first you're like, no, I'm not worthy. Like, I don't, people like me don't make a lot of money. And if I have it, I should feel guilt and shame, and to really help you to accept the reality that you want and repeat it until it becomes real. And one big part of it is to let go of the past through forgiveness, and to accept processing those emotions and to let it go. That is going to really help you also become unstuck. And to start, and then we do the practical work, right? Okay, now like we're doing the mindset work, let's do the practical work to have that match to new mindset. So how are we going to manage money differently? How are we going to spend differently and save and invest, so that you now like the outside starts matching how you want to feel on the inside?
Yes. And that's such a great point. So for everyone that's listening and is interested in speaking to you, I want you all to, from this day forward, from this moment forward, practice the number one thing, which is awareness. So as you are dealing with money, this can happen in so many different ways, even just the thought like about purchasing something. Sometimes for women, it's investing in themselves. It's like, oh, I couldn't do that, invest in a coaching program or a course or something like that. Yet we'll go and purchase XYZ gift for someone, or other things will come into place that actually end up being the same dollar amount. So it's kind of like, that doesn't really, there's a lot of that mindset that's keeping you from that goal. I want you all who are listening to really be mindful of the way you're thinking about money, your expenses, your saving, and sometimes it's hiding from it completely. I know when I started to do my own work with that, I was ignoring shit left and right. And let me tell you, it was like I was paying my bills. I put on auto pay as much as I could and all those things. There was a question actually asked recently, and it was like, how much is the most amount that you've ever paid for a coaching program? And I sat there and I thought, oh, I can do this math really quick. And then there was like two different amounts I was trying to figure out. And I'm like, ooh, I don't know if I want to go back and look at all that, right? And it's like, that's that immediate programming to come in and ignore the transactions. And I definitely have had to do some intentional work to not have it be that way, because when you are a business owner, when you want your money to grow, you're not ignoring it, right? You're treating it with love, and we're growing it. We're paying attention to it. We know where it goes. We're budgeting, all that great stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of self-discovery that I had no idea that was going on in the back of my mind that showed up, especially as I started to take charge of a business. So that was a big aha moment for me.
Yeah. And we call it a relationship, just like it is with a person, right? With money, you have to pay attention to it. You have to look after it. You have to date your money, right? We're going to have money dates. Like, what's going on with you? What did you do last week? Like, catch up with your money and, love it, right?
Yeah.
If you want it to be in your life, another thing is like, do you want this in your life? Then you can't ignore it, right? Like, who wants to be in a relationship with someone who's ignoring them, right? So you got to pay attention, love it, show it that you appreciate it. Like there's this thing called arigato money. I don't know if you've heard it, right? It's like saying, thank you, money, for coming into my life. Thank you, money, when you even spending it. When it's coming in, you're thankful about it. Like you're just really close to it, have an intimate relationship with it. And so then it's no longer scary.
And you have a good attitude about it, right? So I think a lot of times it's like, there's so much negative language and energy surrounding money, like, oh, gas prices are so high, or the stock market's crashing, or housing's impossible, or, all of those pieces. And, while those things are, you can definitely feel those things, are you going to sit in that, or are you going to, look at that differently? So I don't know what your advice or your thoughts are for folks that maybe are catching themselves. So, we said step one, be aware. So when they're aware, then what's the kind of next step for them?
Well, once you're aware, then you know what's going on, right? Then you can do something about it.
Right.
That's the thing. Because if you don't even know what's going on, then you're just operating on autopilot. You're not in control. The point of awareness is to start taking control. So if I know this is happening, what can I do? Right. And you could strategize ahead of time. Even like, let's say you start identifying your emotions, Ramani, like when you're spending, you're anxious. Maybe you realize, oh, I'm anxious when I'm spending on myself. I'm okay spending on my kids. I'm okay spending on other people. Then why do I feel anxious, anxiety, and fear when or guilt when I spend on myself? Then you start analyze that. Oh, it comes from worth. Oh, no one spent on me before, right? Like that's just how I grew up. So people spend on others around, but not me. So I spend on others too, instead of myself. So you start identifying and you kind of figure out what's going on here. It's worth. And, so now you're like, okay, this is how I feel. Then I'm going to start taking steps, to get used to the new feeling of, feeling worthy, right? So I'm going to spend a little bit on myself. Maybe at first you start small, right? And then you just improve over time. So it's just knowing what's going on so that you could do something differently. And that mindfulness really helps with that.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I think, we're speaking mostly right now about mindset. And then, obviously once you get the right mindset, then it can become easier to change those emotions and those behaviors, right? That's kind of the chain of events. And, this applies to not only money, but it applies to you showing up braver for yourself, your life, and your business, for your relationships. Having success and happiness in those areas is a mindful choice. Mm-hmm. I also follow another coach, Jamie, who really talks about using the same steps towards losing weight. It's like, who are you? How are you feeling when you're eating? Are you anxious? Are you ignoring it? So it's all about the relationship with literally everything we touch, right? And I don't want to say that and sound like it's overwhelming, but it's true. Try it. Try to be aware for folks listening, try to be aware of your relationship with all of the areas that you are wanting to have health and growth and change. Notice what those messages, what those thoughts are, what the energy is like with all those areas, and see if it might need a little tweak to become more positive and loving and helpful.
Yeah. And the other thing is the way we relate to one thing in our lives is the way we relate to other things too. So you'll find that, let's say the person who's dealing with the weight issue, right? Like they start working on that mindset. Then I realize, oh, I relate the same way with money, with relationships, with, things in my life. Then the improvements apply across the board and your lives just start improving all together.
Yep, I call that the generalizable effect, right? Yeah, it generalizes to everything. Yeah, 100%. And when you get this skill down, folks, you are going to just succeed in so many different areas. However, it can be difficult because different, areas require more of that digging. And sometimes it's really hard. So money, I think probably for me, money for a while was like the hardest thing for me to understand and figure out and understand those stories until I really started to invest the time and intent and work into figuring out what's going on here because something wasn't working for me, right? So that's where we might need to hire coaches or mentors or read books on the subject. I know I read Denise Duffield Thomas's Get Rich, Lucky Bitch. I don't know if you read that one.
Yeah, I've read. Yeah.
Yeah. So she was kind of my introduction-ish. I think Rachel Rogers also talked about that in her book. There's been a lot of great books on it, but yeah, really that deep dive was really Denise's book for me. And it was so powerful. Books can give us so much information, but I think what really you do that's different is that you are there every step of the way. And not only to consult, because you can read the book again, but you can't really get that in the moment feedback, not only to address those mindset things, but also to make it relate in the practical day-to-day steps too. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah. And the accountability too. That person is, walking with you to make sure that you're getting things done. And the questions too, right? Like I'm talking to you. So I know about your history. I'm asking you the questions that are going to dig deeper and deeper until we get to the root cause of it.
Yeah. Because everyone's stuff is individualized, right? We can't just one size fits all a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm. Right.
What were the biggest maybe mindset blocks for you that you've done the work on to help you live your bigger, braver life in this way?
Ooh, the biggest or hardest thing I had to do is work on my own stuff, like deal
Yes.
with my trauma.
Yeah.
I'm a self-proclaimed professional development junkie,
Yes.
right?
Same.
And that's why I studied psychology. And so I realized, especially after I became a mother, that, okay, I wanted to do something differently, right? From what I experienced. And, when I see my family, I'm like, I think I need some therapy, right?
Right.
So I'm like, and I wanted to do better because I do believe that on a generational cycles, right? I wanted to end some of the cycles that I saw
Right.
that I thought wasn't healthy. And so I started digging in to do my own personal work. So that is the beginning of my transformation, all of that work. And I finally understood why I was the way that I was, right? So we think, oh, this is just the way that I am. This is my personality. But I knew that something was off, right? Like there was this stuckness feeling, like this unsettling feeling that I just wanted to figure out. And the work that I did really opened up my eyes, gave me so much clarity, and even helped me to get here, right? To even start my business. Because before I worked in finance and I was in banking, and then I became a stay-at-home mom. And I was just like, what's next for me, right? Other than, okay, once I fix myself, what's going to happen? Like my kids are going to go to school, and then what? Right. So through all of that work, then I figured things. I had clarity because I had too much junk inside that weren't being processed, and I had to pull it all out, get it all out, and then I had the space, right, to create, and for things that was all around me to kind of take root. Because before, like, there was no space for it because there was too much junk. And that is the work that got me here. And it also helped me to see reality in the sense I just had rose-colored glasses on. I'm just super optimistic and things were happening all around me. And I just couldn't see it because I was just too much in my head and in my, my trauma. So once I dealt with that, then I could see things and I could see what was holding me back, right? My insecurities, my feelings of unworthiness, having rejection and abandonment issues, like all of that was impacting my life. And I didn't realize it, right? Until I worked on it. And then I broke free.
Yes. And that's the thing that I want people to know. And I want to hear your message to folks listening. But what I want people to know is that you can have what you want out of this life. It's going to require some work. And that work, we think is, oh, okay, I'm going to show up at this time and I'm going to work all these hours. But no, the work is internal. The work is mental. The work is emotional. And when you dedicate yourself to that, when you say, I'm sick of this, the way that it's been, I want it differently, I want this bigger, braver life, that is when you can dig in, understand more about yourself, get more confident, get the clarity, get the conviction to do the things that you are made to be here to do, right? That is what we're doing here when we're talking about mindset, when we're talking about ending those generational curses, when we're talking about going after the things you want, we're talking about getting in and doing that self-work. That's what Magdala and I both do and want to support you in. What are some bits of advice or things that you want people to know specifically about the work that you do?
I want people to know that there is a reason behind your actions, your behaviors, the way that you feel, your emotions, right? You're not just this way for no reason. Right. Something created this, and you can figure it out and you can change it. So don't blame yourself too much, or don't get stuck in that shame and that guilt to the point where you won't take action, right? Because you didn't know. And, like, I think it's Maya Angelou say, like, forgive yourself for the things that you didn't know. Once you know better, do better, right? And this is what we want you to do, and not to beat yourself up for all the past mistakes, and to accept that there's a reason and I could figure it out and I could change, but it will require some work, as you just said. And it's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be easy, but it's going to be so worth it. Right? So take your time, make the decision that I want to look into this. I want to get to the root, because oftentimes we just kind of want to patch things on the surface.
Yes.
And that works temporarily. it's not going to be consistent or sustainable. And we want true transformation. And that's going to require some deep inner work and to be brave enough to do it, right? It's okay. It's okay. And you have people, if you're working with someone like you, Angela, and me, or other coaches, that person who's going to be compassionate and empathetic is going to guide you gently through that process to help you get to those goals.
Exactly. Thank you for bringing that up. It's a lot of time I see that we try to Band-Aid or patch things, or we put it off, or, because it is hard and it is scary to have to dig in and do that work sometimes, but trust us, you will come out on the other side better for it. And that will get you to where you want to go, that you can pass on to future generations, whether you have kids or not, right? We have family, we have friends, we have other people that we influence. But thank you for saying that, because I think it's so important to get that true sustainable success by doing that inner work. Mm-hmm. So how can folks work with you that are interested?
Yeah, so I mainly work one-on-one for now. And so on my website, you could book a consultation with me if you would like to learn more about the process and want me to understand your situation better to see if I could work with you. So I mainly work with women and couples, right? And usually couples come to me after they've tried traditional therapy and they're like, we did therapy, it didn't quite work. And then they realize, oh, maybe our issue is money, right? And so we start working on the money and the relationship. I also offer premarital financial counseling because I'm like, can we avoid all this if we actually talk about money before and we're understanding our own relationship with money and, our partners? So I think that's actually something I really want to focus on so that people could avoid like years of heartache and pain and divorce, right? And I also offer help if someone is considering divorce, and we could start talking about the finances on how that would, impact them and their future. Or if there's like anything happening in your life, you're having an inheritance and you're feeling all crazy emotions around that, then we could process those feelings together and help you get to a place where you're feeling more peaceful and in control of your finances.
Right. So needed. Yeah. And I love that part about being proactive, because that's something that I think we could all benefit from. Divorce is usually caused. I know there's kind of like a top 5 list or something, and disagreeing about finances is one of those.
Yeah, number one, actually, even over fidelity.
Okay, then. Yeah. So real important to know what's going on ahead of time and working through that wherever you're at in that. If you think about it, money is something we deal with every single day. It kind of gives us our liveliness. It's very important. And so if people aren't on the same page, then obviously that's going to cause a huge amount of stress. So I love that. So if you're in that place where you maybe are considering getting married and you want to talk about those finances with your partner, that is a great thing to do. And wherever you are in your relationship, definitely seeking that if that's an issue, so you can get to a great place faster, right? With that support.
Absolutely.
Really great. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so for folks that are interested in getting this mindset support, Magdala is focused on the financial piece. So if you're noticing that the finances aren't where you want them to be and having trouble with that, you're going to go to her for that. If there are areas where you just have general issues with your confidence, you want to show up braver, you want to be able to put in boundaries, you want to be clear about your path for your life and your business and live the bigger, braver life, the life that you design, that's where you can come to me. Feel free. We're going to both put our information in the show notes. You can book complimentary. Is your call complimentary?
Yes, it is. Mm-hmm.
Great. You can book complimentary calls with either of us wherever you see fit. And, sometimes I think we may invest in one person and then realize, wow, we really need to get to this other stuff over here. So that can also be concurrent. It can be different parts of the journey, but we invite you to reach out to us. We want to support you in wherever you are with your journey. What final words or encouragement would you like to leave our listeners today?
One thing I want anyone who may think, oh, I'm not good with money, I'm not good with numbers, to remember is that money is more psychological and emotional than it is logical, right? So I don't care if you feel like you don't know math, right? Like that's not what it's about. So just remember that it's more emotional and you could work on that. And, the practical part is easy, like, especially nowadays, we could automate everything and you could get guidance on how to do those things, hire someone to even do them for you. But the emotional part, you cannot outsource and you can do it. Okay. So I just want you to know that you can do it. It is possible. Okay. So don't let anything hold you back from taking the next step to achieve your financial dreams.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think we all need to hear that messaging, I think especially as women, right? Because I think even still, the whole math is hard. I'm not good at math, numbers. I mean, it was a running joke when I was going to school. Like, oh, we're people. We don't do numbers, right? But it's like, no, if you're running a business or just want to take control of your life, you have to be on it with the finances and you have to feel good about that. So thank you. Such important messaging and mission. And I'm so glad that you're here. So reach out to Magdala or myself. We'd love to help you and support you on your journey. Thank you so much for joining today. We will catch you all in the next episode.